letters written by 4 of Mom's best friends. The first is from Ula. She writes, "Our family arrived in Canada in the fall of 1956 and moved into the Dorval Garden Apartments. Upon our arrival, the whole Howard family made us feel welcome and took it upon themselves to teach my 2 older sisters and I English. I became Joan's project. She was such a loving, kind, fun person and my very first friend in Canada. I can remember us laughing and having great fun together on a daily basis. What a wonderful sense of humor she had. When my family moved to Ottawa, the friendship continued. We traveled back and forth to visit each other on a regular basis. We maintained this friendship through all the years that were to follow, getting married, having children, and living busy lives. I am still in awe of how incredible Joan was during her illness, staying active, always looking for the bright side of life. She was an inspiration to all of us. I visited Joan a few years ago. She was still my dear Joan, wanting to go shopping, asking about my life, children and family, and updating me on her busy life. Joan was everything a person could hope for in a best friend. I believe she is smiling and sending her love to all of us today and always. Maybe she is shopping. When you miss her, please let yourself feel her love and warmth surround you. Dear Joan, you are truly loved, my dearest friend, forever, Ula." The next letter is from her friend Elaine. "Joan and I go back many years. We actually both went to John Rennie High School together. We met up many years later when I helped her with cleaning the house while she was working at Noranda. After she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I continued helping out and we became good friends. I was there alongside her through her various residence and hospital stays. She remained strong and was very brave throughout her struggles. She is fondly remembered for her many contributions at her church events and dedication to her family life. She is missed and was loved by so many who knew her." From Elaine Beaumont. Next is from her friend Barbie. "Joni Howard and I didn't find out we had already met when we were 5 years old in Dorval Gardens Apartments until after our families moved into a housing project called Shell in St. Geneviève de Pierrefonds, and we started attending the same Lakeside Heights Elementary School. It was growing up in the sticks of Pierrefonds that we discovered our mutual love of nature and the acres of fields behind our housing project, where we discovered the farmer's bounty of fun things to do when we were bored over the summer months, like riding his giant plow horses bareback and raiding his Macintosh apple tree. Here too we discovered a pollywog pond where our gang of kids built a log raft, and God help us if any fell into this pond because we ended up running home with more than a few bloodsuckers attached to our bodies. One time when Joni and I were raiding the farmer's orchard, we spotted him marching quickly up the field towards us with a rifle under his arm. Joni and I dove under the wild grapevines to avoid being caught by the farmer, or worse, shot with the salt from his long brown rifle. This was a pretty scary experience, especially with Joni's dog Biffy growling and baring his pearly white teeth as the farmer shoved the butt of his rifle almost into our faces. I still remember the pounding of my heart in my chest as Biffy growled louder and as the farmer continued shoving his rifle butt into the vines. For many years, Joni and I thrived on recounting this terrorizing experience to each other, since we always believed if we did get caught, the farmer would drag us to his house near St. John's Road and throw us into his cellar where he would let us rot for the rest of our lives. Joni and I and our Shell gang sure had an exciting childhood those summer months, and I will never forget the experiences we kids would have missed if it weren't for Joni's adventurous spirit. I wonder what shenanigans Joni is up to now in the fields of heaven." That's from Barbie Hill. And the last letter is from her other best friend, Carol. "Having great friends to share your life with is a gift like no other, and having a best friend is one of life's most precious gifts. Joan was definitely a gift to me. Joan came into my life when we were both 20 years old, and our friendship stayed steadfast until the end. Joan loved life and all the people she crossed paths with. She had so many interests and a sheer love of life that people were attracted to her, and many friendships emerged. In our younger days, it was skiing in the winter and tennis in the summer, and Joan's all-year favorite sport, shopping. Joan had no fear on the ski hills of Quebec, and I have many memories of Joan shooting by me heading for the Black Diamond trails, and she would be out of sight in a flash. Summer tennis games were more evenly matched. Both of us were very competitive and would fight it out to the end. I remember one game distinctly. Joan had only scored 1 to my 5 games. In her usual fashion, she fought hard and ended up winning. After we were relaxing after a well-fought match, Joan said to me, "Why did you let me win?" As I turned to answer her, she couldn't help to notice my flushing red cheeks and the perspiration dripping off my chin, and soon realized that letting her win was not my intent. Joan loved to travel, and we had lots of fun times vacationing together, either at trombone skiing or in warmer climates when the cold just got to be too much. We always made lots of memories. When Joan met Mal, the life of being friends as singles changed, but just started a new path on our friendship journey. I was honored to be maid of honor at her wedding, godmother to Scott, and welcomed into their growing family. There were also moments of life when we both really needed a friend, and we were always there for each other. Whether we had messed up our lives ourselves or had dealt us some curves, we were always there to lend a listening ear and help each other find a path to change and healing. Joan's illness changed her life dramatically, but didn't change our bond of friendship. It actually brought us closer. I thank God for Joan's compassionate nurse, Maureen, who left her cell phone on Joan's pillow a few days before Joan passed, so that I could talk to her and remind her of the full life she had lived and that she was loved. To quote Richard Bach, "Don't be dismayed at goodbyes. A farewell is necessary before you can meet again, and meeting again after moments of or lifetimes is certain for those who are friends. So until we meet again, dear friend, love you, Joni." From Carol Sear Hanlon. Thank you.
Hi. So my name is Helen Taylor, and I am Joan's younger sister. We like to emphasize that as time goes on. I wanted to tell you a little about what, from my perspective, it was like with Joan growing up and in our family. We had a very happy family life. Mom and Dad had a great sense of fun. For those of you that don't know, there were 4 girls in the Howard family: Elizabeth Ann, Karen, Joan, and me. Our parents moved out west a few years after the war, and Joan was born in Osoyoos, BC. I was born in North Vancouver. Karen was also born in the Okanagan Valley, I think. Yeah, okay. When Joan was 5, our family took the train across Canada and moved to Dorval, where Dad had a job starting with CAE Industries. We first lived in Dorval Gardens Apartments, as has been mentioned earlier, which had a clubhouse across the river, and it was a happy and active life. Mom and Dad encouraged us to be outdoors and have fun. For example, at Dorval Gardens, the girls played hula hoops or double dutch, skipping all through lunchtime, and Mom would bring out sandwiches so that we could eat while playing. After a few years there, we moved to our house on Circle Road in Pierrefonds. We all shared bedrooms growing up. Our grandmother, Winnie McKay, moved in with us in Pierrefonds, and her bedroom was downstairs. Joan used to go down and spend time with her, listening to her stories. Grammy lived with us for 30 years. Pierrefonds was a great place to grow up, as Barbie said, with big lots, parks, and surrounding fields to run in. We would head out in the morning and be gone for hours. Joan was always very athletic, and some might say a tomboy. She was always biking, running, swimming, and skating. She'd jump off the swing at the highest point and swim to the furthest raft. Together, we climbed trees, did cartwheels on the front lawn, bicycled all over, rode horses, sometimes the farmers, danced the jitterbug in the living room, did leg wrestling and competitive push-ups. However, her pinning me down and tickling me was not welcome. She played baseball and also was a majorette like Karen. Dad played the piano by ear, and we always sang around the piano at family parties and at Christmas. Some of you may remember this. Many a happy Christmas Eve was spent with friends and family at our house, where Mom brought out platters of homemade goodies like sausage rolls and shortbreads and butter tarts. And Dad played the piano. and any visiting males or later son-in-laws would get roped into singing one of the three kings of Orient. We went to church every week, and it was quite a process to get everyone dressed properly and out the door. Dad would stand by the open door and call out loudly, saying, "It's time to go," and we would run from wherever and out the door. After church was always family dinner. In fact, we ate all our dinners as a family at the table. Perhaps a rarity now. It is in my house, actually. These meals would often end with hilarious laughing and someone having to rush off to the bathroom. I seem to remember Joan smiling at me while pushing mashed potatoes out through her teeth. After dinner was clearing up time, which we did in turns according to a posted schedule. Joan was a teen in the 60s and loved it. "We are the St. Genevieve girls, we wear our hair in curls, we wear our dungarees away above our knees," she used to sing. Barbie can tell you the rest. There were often boyfriends around. There was a ping pong table in the basement, which got a lot of use, and we were never short of players because Joan's boyfriends were usually around. Joan often went on dates at night. Karen didn't appreciate her borrowing her clothes to go out and leaving them in a heap afterwards. At a time before cell phones and gaming, we had lots of card games and board games. There were canasta tournaments, Monopoly nights, bridge games. We had a lot of fun. We didn't have a lot of money, but picnics, camping holidays, fishing, visiting relatives in North Hatley, and so on were all greatly enjoyed. Joan found me my first part-time job. She was working as a waitress at the Wayfair restaurant on the Trans-Canada Highway, now the 40, I think. She got me into at age 16. Following me were my boyfriend Dean and my good friend Phil. We had a lot of fun there. Joan also took me to bars with her downtown later. She knew all the best restaurants, nightclubs, and things to do in Montreal. Years later, I would always consult her if something special was sought in Montreal, and she never failed me. Our mom, Hilda, was a busy person, a nurse by profession. She was always involved with volunteer groups. Joan seemed to follow in her footsteps. For a lot of years when Joan was growing up, their similar characters caused clashes between them. When Joan grew up, that settled down, and they got along well. I think Joan was the apple of Dad's eye, although some may disagree. He had a soft spot for her. Joan had a terrific sense of humor and a real sense of fun. Any time with Joan was a good time. She was a dear sister, and we all really miss her.
Thanks everyone for being here. I think my mom would have loved this social event with all of her favorite people together in one place. She would have made sure her hair, makeup, and clothes definitely looked perfect for this party. And she definitely would have introduced everyone to each other to make everybody feel welcome. So maybe we can all do that in her place at the reception afterwards. Before we go on, can we all acknowledge this is a little weird, right? We don't normally have a celebration of life for someone 3.5 years after they've passed. But a lot of weird things happened during COVID. And for a lot of us, those blurry years of 2020 and 2021 mark a clear break in our lives of before COVID and after COVID. And where we sit today, wearing masks in public is perfectly acceptable. Taking medical tests at home is commonplace. Working from home half the time is just what most white-collar workers do. And closer to home, Joan Parker isn't here with us anymore. There's this clear delineation in time of before and after. When she passed away, my cousin Katie, who's here today, wrote me and Ross some very kind words that succinctly express what my mom means to us. Watching your mom love you too was a thing to behold. There are moms, then there are moms. Your mom was the kind that lived and breathed for her children. We could all see how her world revolved around you in the best possible way. How amazing it must have been to have had her as a mom. And it was. It really was. Growing up, she was my anchor. She
She was my cheerleader. Her level of pride in anything Ross or I did was unparalleled. She's the definitive reason I am the confident person that I am today. Sometimes to a fault, if you ask Ross or me. She was a whole person, which you've heard from her friends and her sister. And she somehow managed to find so much more of herself to give to her family. She set a parenting standard of unconditional love and support and devotion that now as a father, I find myself striving to live up to every single day. I think about playing and swimming in Sunnyside Park, going for walks in Cool Breeze Woods, skiing together and playing tennis, trips to the Zeller's restaurant for onion rings, hiding inside clothing racks while she shopped, thinking that somehow we tricked her into thinking we'd been kidnapped. Family bike rides through the tunnel under the 20 highway, singing the Winnie the Pooh theme song as it echoed off the concrete walls. I think about her driving us home from school for lunch and back in the middle of her workday, just so we could spend some more time together. Being at every soccer game, or baseball game, or play, or speech, or musical performance. I think about her comforting me as I slowly understood what death meant when one of my grandfathers and one of my hamsters both died in the same month. I think about the example that she set serving the community of our church and our schools, and picking up strangers in the car who were walking in the rain on their way home from the train station or bus stop to drive them out of their way to their house, with Ross and I complaining afterwards about how weird that was. When I look back, those are the things I really remember and that I aspire to. And although things got more difficult as her Parkinson's progressed, and she was eventually moved to a professional care home, that love that she brought to the world and all those around her was returned in kind. So the next few words are from my dad to express his thanks and gratitude from those 5 years that my mom was in care facilities and hospital. During this time, Joan, the boys, and I were surrounded and supported by an amazing group of helpers who would go with me every night to visit Joan, bring her favorite snacks, and keep her company for a couple hours. Church members, neighbors, relatives, and longtime friends all pitched in to assist in such a caring and meaningful way. And I thank you all for your dedication. It wasn't easy, but they were fantastic. My sister, Joan's sisters, and brother-in-law were there whenever I needed a shoulder to cry on, and visited often from Toronto and Ottawa. Also on my roster was a separate group of very devoted angels. They were my regular visitors who volunteered to visit once a week, sometimes twice if I had a last-minute cancellation. They continually gave of their time to help Joan and myself, an unbelievable gift of love and support. So to Ed Harvey, Joan Baker, Ken Dewar, Elaine Beaumont, and Barbara Fowler, thank you so very much for your immense and selfless contribution. You will always be in my heart. And then he puts a heart emoji at the end, which if you know how good my dad is at technology, that really means something. So, in those words, my dad mentions the snacks that any of us would bring if we were visiting Mom in the evening. He doesn't mention that devoted husband that he is, he's the one who lovingly packed them every night in those black and blue and orange plastic containers that hold the blueberries or mushrooms that you get from the grocery store. And every single night, without fail, there wasn't just one of those containers to bring. There were 4. One with cheese and crackers, one with fruit, one with some kind of cake, and one with chocolate and cheesies. All of Mom's favorite snacks. And as we would catch up on the latest week, what was happening at my work, what my weekend plans were, she would attack each of those containers one at a time. Cheese and crackers, fruits, and cake. But almost every single time, by the time we got to the chocolate and cheesies, she would be full. Or she'd be so tired that it was time to get her back to her room. We'd leave those containers in her room for my dad to eventually collect and reuse, and sometimes there'd be 10 little plastic bins of chocolates and cheesies piled up across from the foot of her bed. I don't know how they didn't get ants. But it was okay because she really loved all those other snacks that she'd eaten, and we'd say goodbye with a big hug and a smile on her face. And over the last 3 years, since my mom passed away, it's hard not to look back at and think about the moments that we haven't been able to share together. The birth of her grandson, Lake, witnessing the incredible person he's become. The birth of her grandson, Beer, and watching him grow into his infectious smile. Her husband becoming a treasured Baba to those two little guys who light up whenever they see him. Her older twin boy exchanging vows with his gaming partner for life at a sugar shack this past summer. And the list goes on and on. And will continue to go on. But I comfort myself in knowing that all those moments in the end are really her chocolate and cheesies. That Mom's life at the end of the day was one that was full, surrounded by cherished family and friends, filled with faith and joy. Her cheese and crackers, her fruit, and her cake. And that all of us are giving her a big hug from down here, and that we parted ways with a smile on her face. I love you, Mom.